Good morning, everyone. This is Rajesh Pichaimani, and I am a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. In this session, we are going to continue our setting up the infrastructure through Infrastructure Composer, and building on top of the previous session, we are going to add the EC2 instance. If you have watched the first session, we set up the basic infrastructure with the VPC, two subnets, and then the necessary routing to reach the internet. Now we are going to add an EC2 instance and have the associated elements such as the key pair, security group, and an IAM role using the infrastructure composer. If you recollect from the last session, as again, we have the VPC same CIDR blocks, the public and the private subnet. This is a new piece that we will be revisiting here with the EC2 and an IAM role that grants permission to the instance with the required permissions. So let's get this started, and I'm going to switch to the console here. This is the AWS homepage. We're going to go with the CloudFormation. In the infrastructure composer, I'm going to select the one that I have created for this purpose. However, I'm going to walk through the additional steps that specific for this session. This whole block is what will be going over in this. The core components is the EC2 instance. And then we have the key pair, the security group, and then the policy and the rules attached to it. So how do we do that? It starts with selecting the instance object that will create an object like this. We go here, select the resource instance, go to the examples directly, and then the YAML format. Here are the main elements for creating the EC2 instance. We need the image ID, AMI. We need the key. We need the block storage to be attached to the device. So this information is copied over here and made some minor modifications. Okay. First, we'll start with the image. This is the Linux 2 image. For now, we'll keep the key name away from the context. I will have to explain in just a second. We have the instance type T2 micro and then the EBS volume that is attached. There's also a network interface, and we are specifying that this particular EC2 instance should go to the public subnet. So we will be able to access, at least for the purposes of this demonstration. Okay. Once this is created, now we will come to the key pair, and this is done by selecting the object, with key pair. When you click and bring it here, it will create an object just like this. And again, going back to the resource reference, just like the previous examples, we are going to specify the key name here, which will create a new key pair and attach it to this EC2 instance. We don't need the EC2 instance properties here, but just this portion alone is enough. So that's what the name is specified. Okay. Once the name is specified here, now we know that this is the key pair that we want to attach to this EC2 instance. In reality, when you're creating a big infrastructure, you might have multiple key pairs. So you will with different names. So how do we associate? Go back to the details of the EC2 instance. The property name is key name, and then we will reference this my EC2 key pair, which creates this connection. Okay. Now the third one is the security group. When we search for EC2 security group, this is the object. Brings to this object here. Click on details. And here is where we wanted to specify the ingress rules, inbound rules. For this discussion and the example, I'm going to select two ingress rules, one for port 22 for SSH, another one for HTTP. And this example can be obtained by this resource reference, examples, YAML file. Just like ingress security group, we can also have outbound rules as well. Again, egress is not needed for this example, so I'm going to keep it just the ingress alone and the reference to the VPC. Okay, so these are the two important properties for the security group. For the VPC, we already know that we already have the VPC, and I am referring this name here. And once it is done, we create a connection to the VPC that was created. Okay. Now, this security group should be attached to the EC2 instance. As you might know, we can attach EC2 the security group to the network interface level. So which means that this reference will be pointed back at this network interface. If this EC2 instance has multiple interfaces, you can attach multiple security groups, and the names will differ in the corresponding network interface. Okay. So that's a reference point that creates the connection of the security group to this EC2. Now, the third component that we may need to use when the creation of EC2 is the IAM role. This is one of the configuration items that you might have experienced in the console. So how do we create here? There are a couple of objects and a couple of steps, and I'm going to walk through that. There are multiple steps that needs to be there. First one is role policy, then the role, and then instance profile. These are the three objects that is needed right now to have this information. When you're creating the attaching the role or creating the role in the console, you might not come across this instance profile. However, for CLI, SDK, and automation, we need this instance profile attached to the EC2 instance. Instance profile is nothing but a logical container to have the role attached to it. Okay. Starting with the role policy, this is the IAM permissions policy, which means that the information that you see in the creation of policies, such as the version, statement, effect, action, resource, will need to be provided here. For the sake of example, I'm allowing everything for this particular EC2 instance. Okay. Now, we will have to keep this away for just a second, the link from the policy to the role here, but then all the other elements can be found. Okay. Now, after that, we will have to create the role to which this permission policy will be attached, right? So when you create this role, you will get a object just like this, which will have the trust information, trust policy information, meaning this is the EC2 instance that has that the EC2 instance can assume the role. Okay. Now the role is isolated and then the policy is isolated. How do we link them? That's the link that is provided in this line. Role name is referencing back to the role. Okay. Now that we have created, attached the policy to the role, Now comes the instance profile portion. Instance profile will refer back to the role that we just created. And how do we attach this this instance profile to this EC2 is going back here, and we will make a reference to this instance profile. Okay. So that's how this link will be there. So I will walk through this one more time. The policy will be linked to the role through this line. And going back here, the role will have a separate information, but this will be referred from the instance profile through this line. And this instance profile will be referred to the EC2 instance through this information property. Okay. Once we have the successful links created, you will see a diagram just like this. The role is policy has a link to the role, the instance profile, etc. So this object, the EC2 instance, has all the elements to it. It also has the component of the key pair, the security group, and finally, it's going to be configured in the public subnet. We can do the validation and it will come back here as valid. If you want to quickly check the template, here is the view of all the resources that was generated through the cloud infrastructure composer without writing the code. Okay. Now we can deploy the resources through this CloudFormation template. We'll just say test P4 as a task stack name. Click on this and finally review and create. As this information will be progressing in just a second, I'm going to open a few tabs for us to validate the details. First is a VPC, second is a EC2, and one more tab for IAM. First is the VPC. Here you are seeing the VPC that was created with a 20-sided block. This is very similar to the previous one session that we saw. The resource map indicates the view of what's resources have been created, two subnets, one public and a private, two route tables associated with the subnets, the IGW associated with the public subnet, and the NAT gateway. Currently, the NAT gateway is getting provisioned, so you will not see this link for a few minutes, but it is currently getting created. Okay. Going back to the EC2 tab, instances, we will go back and check the key pairs. So this is the key pair that was created from the CloudFormation template. And also checking the roles. This is a role that was created. You will see the name of the CloudFormation stack name, the name of the object as specified in the infrastructure composer, and the random values. Here you can validate that the information that was created. We attach this permission policy, the role policy name, and then the trust relationship that was referred as well, which means that whenever the EC2 instance gets associated or assume this role for this permissions, meaning with the admin level permissions. Okay. One more thing to validate is the security groups. This is a security group. Again, the naming convention is very similar, starting from the CloudFormation stack, followed by the name of the object we created, and followed by random characters. These are the two inbound rules that were created for port 80 and 22, allowing everyone. Going back to instances, this is currently getting created. As it will be initializing in a few minutes, let's validate a couple of them. This EC2 instance, in the details page, this is the role that was attached for this EC2 instance. And this is the key pair assigned at the launch. When we go to the security tab, we see this security group with the relevant inbound rules associated with that. As soon as this gets initialized with all the status check passed, we should be able to connect to the EC2 instance in just a second here. We can also validate the progress. The CloudFormation stack says creation complete. Status is complete within the events. If you go to the resources section, here are the 19 resources that were created in this architecture. Half of them, the VPC related and the network related, are similar to the previous one. The EC2 components are the specific to this role. So we have the instance profile with the name here, the instance key pair, the security group, and then the whole EC2 is residing in the public subnet here. Okay. So this is a successful deployment here. When we go back to the EC2 instance, we have the status check passed. Now we can connect to the EC2 instance connect. Because this is residing in a public subnet with the route to the internet gateway, we should be able to connect it successfully. Let's see. Should see the screen shortly, but just before the session, I was able to successfully see the console information, but this is the way you will be connecting it. Okay. Now back to the presentation. So we just did a walkthrough of having the EC2 instance on a public subnet with all the necessary components needed, such as the key pair, security group, and the IAM role. Now that you have seen the simplest example, you will be able to build your specific permission policies with the least privilege access. On the role policy, you will be able to add or modify the security groups, ingress and egress rules, and the different combinations of it. And you can also create the EC2 instance in the public subnet and so on and so forth. All of the combinations are possible with this basic template as you build your architecture in AWS. I just want to thank you for your time. Hope this session will be useful to you. Thanks a lot and hope to see you in the next session. Thank you very much.